Madaya brothers and sisters, I'm Erks from the Holy Trinity Community and Lingkod Davao. Today's gospel is taken from the book of Luke, chapter 12, verses 13 to 21. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to share the inheritance with me." He replied to him, "Friend, who appointed me as your judge and arbitrator?" Then he said to the crowd, "Take care to guard against all greed, for though one may be rich, one's life does not consist of possessions." When he told them a parable, there was a rich man whose land produced a bountiful harvest. He asked himself, "What shall I do? For I do not have space to store my harvest." And he said, "This is what I shall do. I shall tear down my barns and build larger ones. There I shall store all my grain and other goods, and I shall say to myself, 'Now as for you, you have so many good things stored up for many years. Rest, eat, drink, be merry.' But God said to him, 'You fool, this night your life will be demanded of you, and the things you have prepared, to whom will they belong?' Thus will it be for the one who stores up treasure for himself, but is not rich in what matters to God." In today's gospel, Jesus teaches us to watch out and guard against greed. The Catechism of the Catholic Church defines greed as the inordinate desire for earthly goods and something that draws us away from God, who should be the sole joy and treasure of the human heart. We can see greed reflected in the actions of the rich fool today. He have such an abundant harvest, way more than what he needed, probably more than what he was expecting. And what was his response? He wanted to build a bigger barn than what he already owns and keep all of his yield there and plans to enjoy it all by himself. He plans not to work for many years. What a life. Just eat, drink, and be merry. And yet, Jesus calls him a fool. Why? Because while the man was focused on storing up treasures for himself while on earth, he completely ignored the fact that life is uncertain and that his soul needs far greater things than material wealth. In the end, his earthly riches couldn't even save him from death and secure an eternal life for him. This parable invites us to examine our own hearts. Are we like the rich fool who stores up goods and pleasures for ourselves, thinking that this will bring us lasting happiness and security? Or maybe in very subtle ways, we allow our desire for a comfortable life to hinder us from living the life that God calls us to have, a life of simplicity and of generosity. The church teaches us that the virtues of justice and charity are the very antidotes to greed. Justice calls us to give each person their due, recognizing the dignity and rights of others, especially the poor and vulnerable. Charity invites us to love generously, not holding back what we have, but sharing freely with those in need. Living out these virtues means moving from selfish accumulation to a life of detachment and of service. It's a call to truly trust that God will provide for our needs, for what we need exactly when we need it. And in practice, this might look like being intentional about sharing our time, talents, and treasures to others, regularly reflecting what or how much is enough, and learning to be content with what we have. Uh, Practicing gratitude constantly and stopping ourselves from constantly wanting more, and advocating for fairness and justice in our communities, especially in our workplaces, for those of us who are working professionals. As we open our hearts to justice and charity, we find ourselves aligning more with the heart of God, a heart that delights in generosity, in mercy, and in love. And so today, I invite you to ask God to help us recognize any attachment that blinds us to His presence. Let's ask Him for the courage to live simply, to give generously, and to truly treasure what truly endures, which is a life rooted in Him. So, as we strive to live lives of justice and charity, let us also turn our hearts towards our nation, which currently suffers from the weight of corruption and injustice. It seems so easy to be discouraged when evil seems to prevail, when no one is being held accountable for this grave corruption that our nation experiences, especially when we see the neglected sectors of our society, those who are poor and vulnerable, being harmed and neglected by the very ones who were supposed to protect them. But like the prophet Habakkuk, who cried out to God in the midst of internal and external strife and turmoil during his time, let us trust in God's justice and faithfulness. In Habakkuk 3, the prophet's psalm reminds us to really stand firm in faith, rejoicing in God's justice and faithfulness despite difficult times, confident that God's righteousness will ultimately triumph. And so today, please take time to pray for leaders that will be guided by integrity and that will pursue true justice, that those whose hearts are caught in corruption, may their hearts be transformed by God. For those who are victims of corruption and injustice, that God will protect them, that God will put into their hearts continued reasons to hope, to live, and for ourselves, that we may remain faithful, living as witnesses of God's love and justice in the world. God bless you, brothers and sisters.